Ladies and gentlemen, there is a moment, maybe you've felt it, when you realize you're wearing a mask. Not the kind the world can see, but the one you put on for yourself. A mask that says, "I'm okay," when you're not. A mask that nods in agreement when your soul is screaming, "No." But here's the truth most people ignore. The worst betrayal you will ever experience is not from someone else. It's not the friend who turned their back on you. It's not the lover who walked away. It's you. Every time you silence your instincts, every time you ignore that inner voice, every time you shrink yourself to fit into a world that doesn't even notice. And if you don't stop it now, if you don't break this habit of self-abandonment, you will wake up one day realizing you lived a life that wasn't even yours. So listen carefully. This is not just another talk. This is your wake-up call to reclaim yourself. The greatest betrayal is not the one inflicted by others. It is the one you inflict upon yourself, quietly, repeatedly, and often without even realizing it. It happens in the moments when you ignore your intuition, when you dismiss your desires as unimportant, when you silence your truth just to make others comfortable. It happens when you force yourself to smile in situations that make you uneasy, when you say yes, when everything inside you screams no, when you stay in places you've outgrown simply because you fear the unknown. This betrayal is subtle, almost invisible. It doesn't come with grand betrayals like a friend stabbing you in the back or a lover breaking your trust. Instead, it happens in small, everyday moments. The times when you ignore that feeling in your chest that tells you something isn't right. The moments when you let people cross your boundaries, not because you don't have any, but because you are afraid to enforce them. The times when you let others dictate what's right for you, even when every fiber of your being is telling you otherwise. It seems harmless. What's the big deal? You just went along with something you didn't want to do. You just stayed silent when you wanted to speak. You just put someone else's comfort before your own. But the more you do it, the more it becomes a habit. And eventually, that habit becomes your identity. You wake up one day and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. You've spent so long wearing different masks, adjusting to other people's expectations and suppressing your own voice, that you have forgotten what it even sounds like. You start to feel disconnected from yourself, like a stranger in your own body. You feel lost, confused, uncertain about what you truly want because you've spent so much time prioritizing what others want from you. But here's the truth. Every time you betray yourself, you weaken your own trust. You teach yourself that your feelings don't matter. You send a message to your subconscious that your needs, your boundaries, your dreams are secondary. And when you do this long enough, you start to believe it. You start to accept a life that doesn't fulfill you. You stay in relationships that drain you, in environments that suffocate you, in roles that don't align with your purpose. And then one day, resentment starts to build. Maybe you don't recognize it at first, but it's there. A quiet frustration that seeps into your thoughts, a heaviness in your chest that you can't quite explain, a restlessness that makes you feel like you're always searching for something, but never finding it. That's what happens when you abandon yourself. You feel like something is missing, and that something is you. Your voice, your truth, your authenticity. So why do we do this? Why do we betray ourselves so easily? The answer is simple: fear. We fear rejection, so we conform. We fear judgment, so we stay silent. We fear being alone, so we settle. But here's the reality most people don't want to face. Self-betrayal never leads to true belonging. It never brings peace. It never creates the happiness we're seeking. Instead, it does the opposite. It keeps us stuck in cycles of unhappiness, dissatisfaction, and regret. You can lie to the world, but you cannot lie to yourself. Deep down, you always know when you're not living in alignment with who you truly are. You always know when you're sacrificing your soul for temporary acceptance. And if you continue down that path, the cost will be higher than you can imagine. But here's the good news. Just as you've trained yourself to betray your instincts, you can retrain yourself to honor them. You can start small. Begin by listening to that inner voice, the one you've ignored for so long. Pay attention to how your body reacts to certain people, situations, and choices. That discomfort, that unease, that is your soul trying to communicate with you. Stop silencing it. Start trusting it. The next time you feel a no rising in your chest, honor it. The next time you sense that something isn't right, don't dismiss it. The next time you feel yourself shrinking just to fit into someone else's expectations, stop. Because every time you choose yourself, every time you stand firm in your truth, you rebuild that trust, you reclaim your power, and when you stop betraying yourself, something incredible happens. You stop tolerating what doesn't serve you. You stop chasing validation from people who don't value you. You stop settling for anything less than what your soul truly desires. Because at the end of the day, the greatest loyalty you will ever have is not to your family, not to your friends, not to society. It is to yourself. And the moment you embrace that truth, your entire life will change. We are taught from an early age that approval is the key to belonging, that if we follow the rules, please the right people, and fit into the mold that society has laid out for us, we will be accepted, valued, and loved. And so we chase validation. We measure our worth based on how others see us, constantly looking outward for signs that we are enough. But the problem with seeking approval is that it's never ending. The moment you gain it, you have to work to maintain it. And the moment you lose it, you feel as if a part of you has crumbled. It's a fragile existence, one where your self-worth is at the mercy of other people's opinions. Opinions that shift, change, and are often based on their own insecurities, rather than any real reflection of who you are. You start shaping yourself to fit expectations that were never yours to begin with. You dress a certain way, speak a certain way, behave in ways that align with what's acceptable, even when it feels unnatural. You suppress your opinions to avoid conflict. You say yes to things you don't want to do just to be seen as agreeable. You go along with what others expect, thinking that their approval will bring you peace. But deep down, there is a quiet discomfort, a sense that something isn't right, that the life you are living, the person you are presenting to the world, is a performance. You feel it in moments of stillness when no one is watching, a hollowness, an emptiness, because despite all the approval you have gained, something is missing: authenticity. The more you seek external validation, the more disconnected you become from your true self. You begin to forget who you were before the world told you who to be. Your own desires, thoughts, and values become secondary to what will earn you praise. And slowly, without even realizing it, you betray yourself, not in one grand moment, but in 1,000 small ones. Every time you deny your truth to make others comfortable, you lose a piece of yourself. Every time you alter your personality to fit in, you send a message to your subconscious that who you truly are isn't good enough. And over time, this self-betrayal becomes so ingrained that you no longer recognize it as a choice. It just becomes the way you live. You might think that people-pleasing will bring security, that it will keep you safe from rejection, but in reality, it does the opposite. It places you in relationships where you are valued not for who you are, but for how well you cater to others. You attract people who like the version of you that accommodates them, not the real you. And that's why no matter how much validation you receive, it never feels like enough, because deep down, you know it's not truly for you. It's for the mask you wear. And what happens when you finally decide to show up as yourself? Some people will leave. Some will be uncomfortable with the shift. Some will criticize you, saying you've changed, that you're being difficult, that you're not as agreeable as before. But what they really mean is that you're no longer easy to control, that you're no longer willing to mold yourself to fit their needs. And that is where your freedom begins. Because when you stop chasing approval, you start attracting people who appreciate you for who you truly are. You no longer tolerate relationships that require you to shrink yourself. You no longer feel the constant anxiety of wondering whether you're saying or doing the right thing to be liked. You learn that real peace comes not from being accepted by everyone, but from accepting yourself fully. The world has convinced you that external validation is the key to happiness, but it's a lie. The real key is self-simulation, the ability to know your own worth even when no one is clapping for you, the ability to stand firm in your truth even when it's unpopular, the ability to be at peace with who you are, whether others approve or not. The moment you stop living for other people's approval, your entire life shifts. You walk with more confidence. You make decisions based on what feels right for you, not what will impress others. You realize that the people who truly matter are the ones who love you for your authenticity, not your ability to please them. And here's the ultimate truth. The more you validate yourself, the less you need validation from others. The more you trust your own voice, the quieter the noise of the world becomes. The moment you stop seeking approval, you find something far greater, freedom. There is a silent war happening inside of you, a battle between who you truly are and who the world has conditioned you to be. Every day you make choices that either bring you closer to your real self or pull you further away. And the sad reality is that most people spend their entire lives suppressing who they are, forcing themselves into roles that feel unnatural just to meet the expectations placed upon them. It starts early. You are told what is acceptable, what is respectable, what is normal. You learn that certain behaviors will get you praise while others will bring you shame, so you adjust. You mold yourself to fit the standards set by family, society, culture. You start saying things you don't believe, pursuing things you don't actually want, and walking paths that were never yours to begin with. It might not seem like a big deal. You convince yourself that compromise is necessary, that adjusting yourself is just part of being human. But with every choice that goes against your inner truth, you chip away at something vital, your connection to yourself. You begin to feel a quiet discontent, a lingering frustration that you can't quite explain. You achieve things that should make you happy, but something still feels missing. You are surrounded by people, yet you feel unseen. You follow all the rules, yet you feel like a stranger in your own life. And that's because you are living out a script that was handed to you rather than writing your own. And here's the real tragedy. The longer you play this role, the harder it becomes to break free. You become so accustomed to the expectations of others that you lose touch with your own instincts. You hesitate before making decisions, second-guess your own desires, and look to others for validation on what's right for you. You stop trusting yourself because you've spent so long prioritizing what other people think. But let's be clear, this is not how you were meant to live. You were not put here to be a copy of someone else's idea of success. You were not meant to dim your light, to make others comfortable. You were not designed to betray your own truth, just to fit into spaces that do not align with your soul. So why do we do it? Why do we sacrifice who we are in favor of who the world wants us to be? The answer is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of disappointing others. We believe that if we step outside the lines, if we honor our real desires, if we stop pretending to be what we are not, we will be abandoned. So we silence ourselves. We accept less than we deserve. We continue down paths that lead us further and further away from the life we actually want. But here's the truth no one tells you. Betraying yourself is far worse than being rejected by others. Losing yourself is the ultimate loss. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, in moments of silence, in forced smiles, in swallowed words. It happens in every moment you choose someone else's comfort over your own authenticity. And the longer you live this way, the harder it becomes to return to yourself. But no matter how far you've drifted, you can always come back. It starts with one simple yet terrifying act, telling yourself the truth. What do you actually want? Who are you outside of other people's expectations? What dreams have you buried to keep others happy? At first, answering these questions might feel impossible, but that's because you've spent years, maybe even decades, avoiding them. It takes courage to admit that you have been betraying yourself. But the moment you acknowledge it, you take back your power. And here's what happens when you choose to live in alignment with your true self. You stop feeling lost. You stop needing constant validation. You stop settling for relationships, jobs, and situations that drain you. Because when you finally embrace who you are, you start making choices that nourish your soul instead of depleting it. You start attracting people who appreciate your realness, not your ability to conform. You wake up with a sense of peace because you are no longer living a lie. The world will always try to mold you into something convenient, something predictable. But your greatest responsibility is not to fit in. It is to be fully, unapologetically yourself. And the moment you stop betraying who you are, everything changes. You become lighter, freer, more alive. You realize that true belonging was never about changing yourself to be accepted. It was about accepting yourself so fully that you no longer need the world's approval. That is real freedom. And once you taste it, you will never go back. Imagine carrying a weight on your shoulders every single day, a heavy, invisible burden that no one else can see, but you can feel it in your bones. It drains your energy, makes simple things feel exhausting, and keeps you in a state of quiet frustration. This weight isn't something physical. It's the accumulation of every suppressed emotion, every ignored instinct, every moment you went against yourself to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, or to please others. We like to believe that betraying ourselves in small ways doesn't really matter. We tell ourselves it's just a little compromise, just a little sacrifice. But every time you ignore what you truly feel, every time you dismiss what you really want, you don't just lose a part of yourself, you create tension within. And that tension doesn't just disappear, it builds layer by layer until it manifests in ways you can't ignore. You feel it in your body. Tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, tension in your muscles, headaches, a heaviness in your chest. You feel it in your emotions, irritation that seems to come from nowhere, sadness that lingers even when everything in your life seems fine. You feel it in your mind, racing thoughts, second-guessing yourself, the inability to truly relax because something always feels off. This is what happens when you are at war with yourself, when what you say and what you feel are in constant conflict, when your mind tells you one thing but your gut tells you another, when you smile on the outside but feel resentment on the inside. This internal conflict doesn't just create emotional distress. It has a profound impact on your physical health, your mental clarity, and your overall well-being. Stress is not just about external pressure. A large part of it comes from self-betrayal. The more you suppress your truth, the more energy it takes to maintain the illusion. It's exhausting to pretend, to keep up appearances, to act like everything is okay when deep down you know it isn't. You start to notice patterns, chronic stress, anxiety, even physical illness. And yet, so many people never connect these symptoms to the root cause, living out of alignment with themselves. But let's go deeper. Think about the times you said yes when everything in you wanted to say no. The times you tolerated behavior that disrespected you just to avoid confrontation. The times you stayed in situations that drained you because you were afraid of change. Each of these moments felt small in isolation, but together they built a life where you were not truly free. And that's the real cost of self-betrayal. It's not just discomfort. It's a life where you are constantly exhausted, frustrated, and disconnected from your own power. You start to feel trapped, not because the world is against you, but because you have been fighting against yourself. Imagine the opposite. Imagine what it would feel like to release that weight, to say what you actually mean, to honor your real desires, to no longer feel like you're carrying the burden of pretending. Imagine waking up without the exhaustion of maintaining a version of yourself that isn't true. This is what alignment feels like. This is what freedom feels like. It's not about selfishness or disregarding others. It's about being honest with yourself so that you can live with peace instead of constant internal struggle. It's about realizing that your body and mind are always trying to guide you, but you have to be willing to listen. Where in your life are you out of alignment? What is your body trying to tell you through its stress and exhaustion? What truths have you been avoiding because they feel uncomfortable? The moment you stop ignoring these signals, the moment you start listening to what your soul has been trying to tell you, everything changes. You don't just feel lighter, you start to heal. You stop carrying unnecessary burdens. You stop feeling so drained. You stop allowing stress and resentment to control your life. And most importantly, you reconnect with yourself. The version of you that existed before you started prioritizing everything and everyone else over your own well-being. The version of you that deserves peace, deserves rest, deserves to live fully and unapologetically. Because at the end of the day, the real enemy isn't the external world, it's the battle within. And once you stop betraying yourself, you stop fighting, you let go, you realign, and for the first time in a long time, you finally feel free. Every decision you make, every choice, every action, it all comes down to one thing, whether you are acting out of love or out of fear. Fear keeps you small. It convinces you to stay quiet when you should speak, to hold on when you should let go, to shrink when you should expand. Love, on the other hand, does the opposite. It urges you to grow, to express, to live fully and honestly. The way you treat yourself is no different. You're either betraying yourself out of fear or honoring yourself out of love. But fear is deceptive. It doesn't always appear as panic or terror. Most of the time, it disguises itself as logic, as responsibility, as the voice in your head that tells you, this is just how things are. You don't really have a choice. That voice convinces you to stay in unfulfilling relationships because leaving would be too painful. It tells you to accept less than you deserve because asking for more is risky. It tells you to stay silent, to tolerate mistreatment, to put your needs last because standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, choosing your own path, that feels dangerous. And in a way, it is dangerous, not to your well-being, but to the version of you that was built on self-betrayal. Choosing yourself threatens everything that isn't aligned with your truth. The moment you start to listen to yourself, to really listen, everything that is inauthentic begins to crumble. Relationships that depended on your silence start to feel unbearable. The weight of pretending becomes impossible to carry. That's why so many people resist change. They know deep down that being true to themselves will require them to let go of things they've spent years holding on to. And that's terrifying. It's easier to settle, to numb yourself, to convince yourself that things aren't that bad. But if you are constantly suppressing your needs, constantly ignoring your intuition, constantly making yourself smaller just to keep the peace, then let me ask you, whose life are you really living? Because it isn't yours. It's a life dictated by fear, by expectation, by the idea that pleasing others is more important than being true to yourself. And if you keep living this way, you will wake up one day and realize that you've spent your entire existence serving a version of yourself that never truly existed. You'll realize that the years passed, the opportunities faded, and all the things you wanted, the things you really wanted, were sacrificed for a false sense of security. But here's the truth. Security, at the cost of authenticity, is just another form of imprisonment. You might be comfortable, but you won't be free. How do you stop betraying yourself? How do you stop allowing fear to control your choices? You begin by recognizing that the fear will never fully go away. It will always be there, whispering, questioning, trying to pull you back into what feels familiar. But just because it's there doesn't mean you have to listen. Fear only has power over you when you allow it to dictate your actions. The moment you choose to move forward, despite the fear, despite the discomfort, despite the uncertainty, that's when everything changes. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you won't face difficulties. In fact, it might make things harder at first. You might lose people. You might have to walk away from situations that once felt safe. You might have to sit with uncomfortable truths about who you are and what you've accepted. But on the other side of that discomfort is something far greater: peace. Not just surface-level peace, the kind that comes from avoiding conflict, but deep, internal peace. The kind that comes from knowing that you are no longer living a lie, that you are no longer making decisions based on fear but on love, that you are no longer betraying yourself just to make others comfortable. And here's the most beautiful part: the more you choose yourself, the less fear controls you. You start to trust yourself again. You start to recognize your own power. You start to see that the people who truly belong in your life will respect you for who you are, not for who they expect you to be. You stop needing validation from the outside world because your sense of worth comes from within. So the question is simple: will you continue to let fear dictate your life, or will you finally choose yourself? Because at the end of the day, you only have two choices. You can either betray yourself in exchange for temporary comfort, or you can embrace yourself fully and step into the life you were always meant to live. One path leads to regret, exhaustion, and an existence that never truly feels like your own. The other leads to freedom, authenticity, and a life where you no longer have to pretend. And that choice is yours alone to make. There comes a moment in life when you realize that no one is coming to save you. No one is going to step in and fix everything for you. No one is going to read your mind, understand your struggles, or suddenly decide to give you the respect, love, and validation you've been silently hoping for. And in that moment, you have two choices. You can continue waiting, hoping, and wishing, or you can decide once and for all that you are done betraying yourself, that you will no longer tolerate being an afterthought in your own life, that you will no longer stand on the sidelines hoping someone will finally see your worth. No one else can free you from self-betrayal. No one else can make you stop tolerating less than you deserve. No one else can force you to set boundaries, to demand respect, to walk away from situations that drain you. This is your responsibility and yours alone. And the longer you wait for external permission, the more time you waste living in a cycle of frustration, exhaustion, and quiet resentment. Self-betrayal happens when you wait for others to do what you should be doing for yourself, when you expect someone else to validate you instead of recognizing your own worth, when you rely on others to love you the way you refuse to love yourself, when you stay in situations that make you miserable because you're afraid of being alone, or because you think suffering is the price of belonging. But here's the harsh truth. When you betray yourself, you teach the world how to treat you. You show people what you are willing to accept. And if you constantly put yourself last, if you tolerate disrespect, if you allow yourself to be drained by people who take and take without giving back, then that is what your life will continue to reflect. Because life will not give you what you wish for, it will give you what you accept. Think about the moments in your life where you felt the most lost, the most exhausted, the most disconnected from yourself. Were those not the moments when you abandoned your own needs? When you silenced your own voice? When you allowed someone else's expectations to dictate your choices? This is not just a coincidence. It is cause and effect. The more you betray yourself, the more lost you become. And this is why reclaiming yourself is not just about saying, I deserve better. It's about acting on it. It's about making decisions that reflect your worth, even when they are hard. It's about choosing yourself, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's uncomfortable. It means saying no when you want to say no, even if it disappoints people. It means walking away from relationships that drain you, even if you fear being alone. It means stopping the cycle of over-explaining, over-giving, and over-sacrificing in hopes that someone will finally recognize your value. Because the people who truly see you, who truly respect you, will never require you to betray yourself just to keep them happy. But here's where many people get stuck. They want to stop betraying themselves, but they are afraid of what will happen if they do. They fear rejection, they fear loneliness, they fear change. So they continue to compromise, to suppress, to settle, telling themselves that one day things will be different. But when is that day? How much more of your life are you willing to waste waiting for things to magically shift? At what point do you finally decide that enough is enough? Because, let me tell you something, the world will not stop for you. People will not suddenly change because you silently wish they would. Your life will not transform until you decide to transform it. And that decision, it's not something that happens overnight. It happens in small daily moments, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you choose to protect your energy, in the way you set boundaries, even when it's uncomfortable. It happens the moment you stop looking for someone else to save you and realize that you are the only one who can. So if you've been waiting for a sign, for permission, for some external force to tell you that it's finally time to choose yourself, this is it. This is your moment. Right now. Not tomorrow, not someday, not when you feel ready. Because you will never feel fully ready. The fear will always be there, whispering, making excuses, trying to convince you to wait just a little longer. But waiting will only lead to more regret, more exhaustion, more of the same. The time to stop betraying yourself is not in the future. It is now. You have to decide who you are going to be. Will you continue to live a life that is not your own, bending to expectations, tolerating what drains you, and betraying yourself just to keep the peace? Or will you finally stand up, take control, and reclaim the life that was meant for you? The truth is, no one is coming to give you permission. No one is going to hand you the life you deserve. You have to choose it. You have to create it. And that starts with one simple but powerful decision: to stop betraying yourself. It won't be easy. It won't be comfortable. You will face resistance, not just from others, but from within. Fear will try to hold you back. Doubt will creep in. Old habits will try to pull you into familiar patterns. But none of that matters. What matters is what you do next. Because the moment you stop waiting, the moment you stop hoping for others to change, the moment you stop allowing fear to make your choices, that is the moment your life truly begins. That is the moment you start living, not just existing. So, ask yourself, are you ready to stop betraying yourself? Are you ready to stop shrinking, settling, and silencing your truth? If the answer is yes, then don't wait another second. Choose yourself. Choose your freedom. Choose the life that was always meant to be yours. Because in the end, you are not just breaking a habit, you are breaking a cycle of self-abandonment, of seeking validation, of living for others while neglecting yourself. And once you break that cycle, you will never go back. Because nothing is more liberating than living in alignment with who you truly are. The choice is yours. Always has been, always will be.